is a member who lives in the area. She talked to us before earlier this fall. Let's see, all of a sudden I've just gone blank on everything that I want to tell you about Priscilla, but of the Canadian Ski Marathon, which she's participated in for a few years. And let's just welcome Priscilla Kaufman, please.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and try to share my screen. So let me know, make sure I've got it all for everybody. Can you see all that?
Right here.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna hide everybody's faces so I can see my screen. So first of all, yeah, I'm Priscilla Kaufman, and many of you know I love wilderness canoeing, but the thing I love most in the whole world is the Canadian Ski Marathon. And so I really appreciate you coming to let me talk about it today.
No, I did it to her.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sorry, Priscilla. I muted everybody, including our speaker.
No
My
problem.
apologies.
No problem. But anyhow, before I really talk about the Canadian Ski Marathon, I wanted to take the word marathon on, because if you have never participated in this event, I think it's really daunting. And it was for me. I am not an endurance skier. I am somebody who simply just loves Nordic skiing. And I think going into it, when you see the word marathon, the first thing you think of is, oh, that's more than I can handle. I can't do it. That's for somebody younger. That's for somebody more athletic. And it's not. And once you've done the Canadian Ski Marathon, of course, you want people to think that, because it's really wonderful to say, oh, yes, I just came back from the Canadian Ski Marathon. But the Canadian Ski Marathon, what it really is North America's longest classic ski tour. So, oops, hold on a second. Let me use my arrows. So what I hope you kind of walk away from tonight is just understanding that really what the Canadian Ski Marathon is about is adventure and being outside. It is a chance to experience ski trails that are only groomed for 2 days once a year, that go through the southern Quebec wilderness and through small towns. You're going to go through hills and valleys, you go over frozen lakes. It's just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to get outside if you love being outside, and get out and ski if you love to ski. And the great thing is you don't have to do the whole thing. There's 10 sections to choose from. They're varying lengths. And so this really isn't a race. It's really all about sort of your challenge. I used to be a speed skater, really bad speed skater, but they always talked about personal best. And this is really about getting your own PB, your own personal best. And there is some recognition. There's some categories where you actually can get a little medal, but for most people, it's just a sense of just sort of achieving something, of pushing themselves a little bit farther. And one of the great things about it is the Canadian Ski Marathon is really, really well supported. So you're not going out alone into the Quebec wilderness hoping you make it back alive before dark. There's checkpoints, there's food at all the checkpoints, there's restrooms, there's food, there's drinks, there's first aid, there's people to help you with waxing, and there's a ton of people just to cheer you on and encourage you. And one of the really wonderful things about it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this, is sort of the friendship and fun that's involved in the Canadian Ski Marathon. And in fact, I just saw when I got here, 2 of my friends whom I met at the Canadian Ski Marathon are actually on this call tonight. So, and no event would be remiss if you didn't get a little swag. So all participants in the Canadian Ski Marathon get these lovely little badges that, of course, I have to sew on all my backpacks. They look so cool. And toques, which are these wonderful ski caps. And that's my husband's head. He was my model to show off the very I've had, or the ones that I still. So what I hope you walk away from is realizing is that the Canadian Ski Marathon is a ski adventure for anyone. That doesn't matter if you're a recreational skier. It doesn't matter if you're in your 60s or your 80s or your 50s, or if you're 10 years old. It's really something for everybody. And for those of you that are endurance skiers, that are really competitive skiers, this is also a fantastic event. And I'm going to focus more on the recreational aspects, but I just want you to know there is a real competitive endurance aspect of this as well. So before I begin, and I think we'll kind of explain my approach to how I see the Canadian Marathon, I want to tell you a little bit about my own ski experience. I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I moved out there when I was a young child, and my mom decided to learn to ski when she was a young adult, and therefore she decided to make all her children learn to ski. And so I started skiing from the time I was 7, and I am a terrible downhill skier on perfect snow. But my mom forced me to go every week, which I did until I got out of high school, but I was never very good at it. But the one thing I did learn is to force my own children. And so this is a picture of my daughter, Hannah, about 15 or 18 years ago, and I forced her to cross country ski. And well, I will say that it never took to her the way it took with me. She's a decent skate skier now. And the really lovely thing is that's a picture of her last year up at Montebello at the Canadian Ski Marathon. She came up, she didn't participate, but she came to cheer me on. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I am now an official ambassador for the Canadian Ski Marathon. And really what that means is that I just love this event so much that I am always convincing people to participate. And they finally came to me because I think I brought like 6 people last year. I don't know. I just keep bringing people because I think it's so wonderful. And so the thing that's really nice about this is when I went to prepare this presentation, I don't take a lot of pictures when I'm skiing because I'm just trying to ski. And so they provided me with some awesome photos and some material to help me here. So the way I actually got into the Canadian Ski Marathon, I went back to nursing school. I decided to switch careers when I was about 50. And so while I was in nursing school, I met a young woman who I just hit it off with. She was my daughter's or my kid's age. And we got talking, and it turned out she loved to cross country ski. And I said, well, gee, so do I. And so we would sometimes go to Mendon Ponds together, but it turned out that she was a former racer from the University of Minnesota, and she was 23. So we didn't exactly ski at the same level, but every weekend, she and her husband, who was also a former racer from the University of Minnesota Nordic Ski Team, they would go off every week and compete in various ski marathons. And one of the events they did was the Canadian Ski Marathon, which is not a race like most of the other ones were, but I was really, really intrigued. Unfortunately for me, they went back to Minnesota, and I really wanted to try the marathon, but I didn't really want to do it alone. I was just a little bit nervous. I hadn't been up there to ski. So for about the past 15 years, I have been drinking wine with my neighbors in Honeyway Falls. And so I hatched a plan and invited them all over for wine. I pulled up pictures about this and videos of the Canadian Ski Marathon, showed them pictures of the Chateau Montebello, and convinced them by the time the evening was done to pull out their credit cards, register to ski in the Canadian Ski Marathon, and go up with me. So this is a picture of my neighbors, Jan, Ginny, and Sherry. And I just want to give a shout out because Sherry, who is the person in the blue park on the upper left, had only skied one time in her entire life when she agreed to ski the Canadian Ski Marathon. And that's a picture of her at the bottom, and she skied 20 kilometers her first day. And so it was a real sense of achievement for all of us. And we just had a great time as friends. So the other thing I want to tell you, 2 of the people on the call tonight are Ross and Beth McLeod. And Beth is the woman in the lower left-hand corner in the purple shirt with the short hair. And the other woman, I'm sitting next to Ross, her husband on the other side. And after I had skied the marathon once or twice, I wanted to do a little bit more, but my neighbors had sort of had enough for the day. And I was standing at a checkpoint, and I got in conversation with this woman. She shared her Lara bars with me. And when I wasn't sure if I was going to ski the next section by myself, she said, I'll ski with you. And I will say that Beth McLeod is a significantly better skier than I am, but she skied the entire section with me and got me so that was the most I'd ever skied. And over the years, we would run into each other at the Canadian Ski Marathon. And I never ran into her husband, Ross, because he is a Coureur de Bois. He's an endurance skier. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we ran into each other, gosh, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, because she decided to stay at the Chateau Montebello. And we went curling after the ski marathon was done and got talking. And it turned out that she was heading out to Colorado. She and her husband had recently retired, and they were going to go out, not just to Colorado, but to the West Coast. And I have my oldest friend from Utah. He and I have been friends since we were in 5th and 6th grade, lived out in Colorado. So without even calling him, I just gave, I think, Beth his contact information. I said, you ought to stay with my friend Paul Zelenkov out in Colorado. He'll show you around. So that picture in the upper left-hand corner is a picture of Paul Zelenkov and I about 35 years ago. We went cross-country skiing up in Little Cottonwood Canyon, which is outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. And Paul and I, in fact, Paul was my date. I just should say this. He was my date to the junior prom. We've been friends forever. And so Ross and Beth went out and stayed with Paul and his wife, Lori. And most recently, Ross, Beth, and I went out, and we went out. My husband didn't come, but the rest of it, we all went out and we went to Colorado, went hiking. And so this past year, we convinced my former date to the junior prom, Paul Zelenkov, to come out and meet us and ski the Canadian Ski Marathon. So the picture at the bottom right is my oldest friend, Paul Zelenkov, who I convinced this past year to come out and ski the Canadian Ski Marathon. And that's, I think that's after the end of his first day of skiing at the bottom of that photo. So to now really, I'm going to talk about the Canadian Ski Marathon. And most of what I'm going to talk about is more informational as opposed to anecdotal. But the first thing you should know about the Canadian Ski Marathon is it was started a little over about 50 some years ago when a guy named Don McLeod, who I believe was on the Canadian ski team, and he took a group of skiers, and in celebration of the Canadian Centennial, he skied from outside of Ottawa all the way across 160 kilometers to Montreal. And that rather quickly morphed into what we now know as the Canadian Ski Marathon. And it became a 2-day event that has always been held in this first weekend. It says every second weekend in February. I would say it was the first, but it's usually about the 10th or so of February. I believe at the peak, it had about 3,500 skiers. Right now, there's over 1,500 skiers participating. It's very much a family event, and it's for people of all ages and all abilities. And I included this photo because this is a photo of Jack Rabbit Johansson, who is known, I'm sure many of you have heard of him. He's the father or the grandfather of Nordic skiing in North America. He has long since passed, but he skied the Canadian Ski Marathon until I believe he was 92 or 93. And so I just thought that was really a wonderful photo to show, to see that he had been a part of the Canadian Ski Marathon. So the Canadian Ski Marathon itself is a 160 kilometer ski tour for classic skiing. It's over 2 days. And the trail for the Canadian Ski Marathon is only created for those 2 specific days. And over time, the Canadian Ski Marathon organization has just developed relationships with all the landowners to enable them to go in and just create this trail for people to use for these 2 particular days. Now, the trail itself is built up into 10 sections, and it goes now south from Mont Tremblant to a town called Montebello, which is just on the Ottawa River, all the way east to Lachute, which is just outside of Montreal. Now, up until about 3 or 4 years ago, it used to go from outside, just north of Ottawa in the Gatineau Park, which is in Quebec. That it went directly east to Montebello and then to Lachute, but because of global warming, they really needed better ski conditions, and so they moved the trail several years ago. And I will say that if you read the write-up in the ADK thing, I forgot, and for some reason I put that it still went from the Gatineau to Lachute, and that's no longer true. So one of the other things they do, so you can have a little more variety, is every other year the trail switches up. So last year the trail, we started just south of Mont Tremblant and skied, to Montebello and then to Lachute. But this next time it would go from Lachute to Montebello and then north to Mont Tremblant. And the really wonderful thing that makes the ski marathon so accessible is you can ski as many sections as you like. The most you can do is you can ski 5 sections each day, so roughly 80 kilometers. And the sections have designated start and finish times at each checkpoint, so that way people are always safely on and off the trail. And there is transportation provided by the Canadian Ski Marathon to and from each checkpoint. So you don't have to worry about getting there, and you don't have to worry about getting back. It's all arranged. And what's really lovely is the Canadian Ski Marathon also provides snacks and restrooms, waxing, first aid. And I will say that all of this is volunteer. This is I would say 99.999% volunteer organization. There is, I think, one half-time employee. And so what you see out here, I love this photo because these are, I would believe, high school kids, and sometimes they're from a high school. They might be cadets, which is like the Scouts. They might be from the Army. They might be a ski club. But various groups take on a particular portion of the trail to help support it, whether it's a checkpoint, to sign off people, or if it's just to provide food. And in this case, you see a bunch of kids. What they're doing on occasions, the marathon trail has to cross roads. And so what these guys are doing is they're protecting skiers and cars from each other, and they're maintaining the trail so that when people ski across the road, the snow is still good. So I'm going to show you a very busy map, but I think it'll give you a little bit better idea. And then I'm going to go into a little bit of an elaboration of what the map is showing you. So this is a full map of the Canadian Ski Marathon. And just to kind of orient you, I would look at the lower right-hand corner, and you see where the compass is. And if you were to go just east of the compass, you would run very quickly into Montreal, just to kind of orient you. And then you see over on the left-hand side, you see the town of Montebello. And Montebello, if you can see right next to it, there's a little bit of water in that map. That is the edge of the Ottawa River. So really what you're talking about is the southern part of Quebec that really rests just north of the province of Ontario. And the trail itself, as you can see, there's 10 sections. Section 10 begins near Mont Tremblant, and it says 12.4 kilometers. And then section 9 and so on. And the name of these sections 10, 9, 8, those names never change. It's just the direction that change. And so I will just talk about this past year. I convinced a really lovely woman who I met skiing named Tala to come with me to the very first time to the Canadian Ski Marathon, because and which was wonderful, and she did. And we were trying because, as you know, here, everybody who's been here realizes that in the past 10 years, the ability to ski has really decreased locally because of the warming weather. So we were really contending with the fact that we hadn't had as much opportunity as we would like to sort of ski prior to going to the marathon. So when Tala and I were looking at this whole map, trying to figure out which sections we were looking at, we were kind of contending with how far do we want to go, like on a bus. So for instance, the bus from Montebello to Mont Tremblant to start at the beginning of section 10 is well over an hour. And we wanted to ski for a while, but we didn't want to ski to the point that we were going to pass out. In the very end, she and I decided to ski section 9 the first day. My friend Beth and my former prom date Paul started section 10, and they skied section 10 and 9. So, and I will say Ross McLeod, who's on this call, skied section 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 all the way through the entire thing. So now I just talk about this because one of the things you have to do when you go to the Canadian Ski Marathon is figure out what it is you want to ski. So one of the great things about the registration packet is they give you a lot of information about the trail. and they'll tell you sort of the various levels of the trail in terms of how difficult they are, and obviously the length. And so these are all the kind of things you want to kind of take into consideration when you're thinking about what you want to ski, sort of your own ability, your own interests. And one important thing is the weather. In this past year, when we went to ski, it was absolutely perfect conditions. And it was beautiful blue sky the first day, but it was 9 below 0 Fahrenheit for a high. So that meant that whatever we skied, we really had very little opportunity to stop. And that was actually, for Tal and I, that was kind of tough, because we had to, you know, at some point you want to kind of take a rest. And if you rested more than a minute, your body temperature just cooled down too much. But anyhow, these are all the type of things you look at. Now, I am going to talk specifically about section 3, just to give you an idea of a little bit more of the detail that you can get kind of determining what you would want to know before you decided with sections. And it's not that I like section 3, it's just when I went back to the people at the Canadian Ski Marathon, that was particularly what they had available. And I think it's pretty ironic, because section 3 they're describing as intermediate, and that's only because of the direction. Section 3 is the absolutely most difficult section that I've ever come in, aware of at the Canadian Ski Marathon, because of the level change. And so, but when you're looking at this, I'm just going to talk you through it. So this is section 3. You're going to get like a little bit more detail about what section 3 looks like. And as you can see here, well, great. Section 3, looks like there's one road crossing, and at that one particular road crossing halfway, you see that there's additional first aid, and there's an additional refreshment station. And so these are the kind of things that kind of help you plan. I can see the distance. I see that it starts by a river, and so on. But the thing that I find really important about the information they send is because it is the altitude change. And as I said, I grew up skiing as a very bad downhill skier on perfect snow. So you can imagine how little, how poorly I do as a downhill skier on Nordic skis. So when you're heading east and you go up this big hill, it's tiring, but it's not particularly daunting to go shooting down. However, they refer to this section when you're going from east to west, when you go down that big downhill, they refer to it, I think, as the bobsled. And I will say that I don't know if any of you have skied the Birkie. I have not, but one of my friends who I also brought to the Canadian Ski Marathon is goes to the Birkie every single year. And he said to me that he felt that the Birkie was significantly less up and down. It was much more manageable in terms of rolling terrain than the Canadian Ski Marathon. But that being said, whenever I get to hills that I don't feel comfortable with, I just take my skis off and walk. There's no shame in that. So once you decide, and really one of the first things you decide even before which sections you want to ski is you want to look at what kind of participant you want to be. So the Canadian Ski Marathon offers different categories of registration for everybody. And the most affordable way to try it out for the first time is called a taster. And it's much less expensive, but you can only do the last section of the trail on the first day and the last section of the trail on the second day. I have always entered as a tourer, which means you can do what you want, as much or as little as you like, and you can choose from any of the sections. And I will say that people enter not only as individuals, but you also see teams. Likewise, you can enter to do a half marathon. And I think that's for people that just kind of want to put a little goalpost out of there as they're working up towards something I'll talk about in more detail called the Coureur de Bois. And a half marathon just means that you are going to ski 3 contiguous sections, both Saturday and Sunday. But ultimately, the Canadian Ski Marathon has a group of skiers. It's about a third of the skiers. They're called the Coureur de Bois. And I would just think of them as the cool kids. I'm going to talk about them a little bit more in detail, but basically they're broken up into 3 particular groups. And this is the group that skis the entire 160 kilometers of the marathon. So here's some great photos of the various people in the upper left-hand corner. These guys are Coureur de Bois, and I know that simply because they've got packs on their back. And as you can see, there's a couple of children here. And one of the really lovely things that you often see is people that have skied in their youth, in their 20s or their early 30s as Coureur de Bois will come back later in life in their 30s and 40s, and then ski it with their children. You also see a lot of skiers my age. You see older skiers, and I love this bottom picture because the Canadian Ski Marathon is really for everyone. And when my neighbors and I would go up to, and we would stay at the Chateau Montebello every year, there was a group of Canadian women that would also show up at the same time we did. And they were, I would say they were all in their mid 70s. And I would also note that one of the reasons I noticed them is because they would pass us every single time we ran into them. So let's talk about the Coureur de Bois. This, I am not going to spend a lot of time on this, and I don't know if there's any like elite athletes or really serious Nordic skiers here that want to learn more about this, but Ross McLeod is actually on this call, and I know he could answer some questions if people have questions about it. But briefly, I just want to talk to you about this. There are, of the 1,500 skiers that participated last year in the Canadian Ski Marathon, roughly 500 more or less were Coureur de Bois. They are broken down into 3 categories: bronze, silver, and gold. And the only way you start, you have to start out as a bronze, and you can't be a silver until you're bronze, and you can't be a gold until you're silver. And so essentially what the bronze are expected to do is just prove that they can ski the entire 160 kilometers. So what they do is they get up and they ski the 5 sections Saturday, and they ski 5 sections Sunday. And there are cutoffs. So if they don't make that final cutoff time at 3:15 p.m., they won't be able to do it. And that's for everybody's safety. But the thing about skiing as a bronze is, even though you skied 80 kilometers that day, you still get to go home, sleep inside, you can take a shower, have a beer, sit in the jacuzzi, whatever you need to do to refuel, and get up and do it for the next day. Once you've done that, people become silver, and that enables them to now do the same race, and the ski tour, but they carry packs on their back with a minimum of 5 kilometers, like 12 pounds. But at the end of the day, at the end of Saturday, they're still going to go back to wherever they're staying, and they're going to sleep inside. They'll have a shower, they'll eat, they'll regroup. But once they've done that, they've earned the right to be a gold Coureur de Bois, which my friend Ross McLeod is. And in that case, not only do they ski 80 kilometers, they carry everything they need on their backs: a sleeping bag, a sleeping pad, all their food, any extra warm clothing. And then they sleep outside at night at a designated area known as Gold Camp. And then get up first thing in the morning, eat the breakfast that they brought with them, and then finish the 80 kilometers. So as you can imagine, to be a Coureur de Bois, you really, 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 really need to train. But it's a huge honor. Roughly, of these 500 skiers, about 200 are bronze, 100 are silver, and then there's another 200 that are gold. So here's a couple of pictures of them. You can see these guys in the top left. I don't know if they're gold or silver, because I can't see it, but I know they're carrying packs. I'm assuming the guy on the bottom, you can see he's got a sleeping pad on his backpack. And I would just note, if you see, he has an extra ski pole. And I know my friend Rob, who was trying to do his first gold Coureur de Bois last year, broke his pole about 60 kilometers in, and wasn't able to finish the bronze Coureur de Bois. So a lot of people have to bring some, learn to do things like that to be safe. This picture up at the top on the upper right is Gold Camp. And Gold Camp is manned by volunteers who set out straw bales and create fires that they keep going all night, so that the skiers are, warm and relatively comfortable. Just to kind of reiterate, skiers of the Coureur de Bois ski 160 kilometers over 2 days. They start before sunrise, and you'll see, if you ever go onto YouTube, which I highly recommend to look at some of the videos of the Canadian Ski Marathon, you'll see that the Coureur de Bois started with much fanfare, in the dark, wearing headlamps, and it takes between 10 to 12 hours to complete the course for most people. And the thing to remember that when you're Coureur de Bois, this is not, and everybody knows this when you ski, you don't pick the weather, right? And so the weather, can range from well above freezing to, well below. And because of that, Coureur de Bois are going to be, not only are they burning a lot of energy just moving, but also keeping warm. So generally they're burning about 10,000 calories a day. So, one of the best ways, if you decide to do the Canadian Ski Marathon, you always can find information at skimarathon.ca. I highly recommend checking out the website because there'll be photos, there'll be all sorts of information, registration, and so on. But briefly, I'm going to talk about some of that information. I'm going to talk about how to get there. I'm going to talk about where to stay. And I'm going to give you a little idea about what sort of the buses are that get you to and from places. So unlike if you live in Toronto or Montreal, there's actually charter buses that you can arrange for the Canadian Ski Marathon to bring you to the race, which is lovely, especially if you are, let's just say you flew in from Colorado and you landed in Montreal, you could probably organize a way to get there by charter bus. But for those of us in Rochester, the only way to get there is really to drive. So Rochester to Montebello, which is the heart of the Canadian Ski Marathon, is the halfway point, and it's where most of the accommodations are, is roughly a 6-hour drive. But you notice on this map that to get there, you have to go east to Syracuse, north up the snow belt, along the St. Lawrence Seaway up to Ottawa, and then along the Ottawa River. And this is during the first half of February. So I'm just going to tell you that even though it's 6 hours, it's never worked out that way because of the weather. And I have driven up there in blizzards, and I've driven home in ice storms. It's always an adventure. And part of getting there has always been kind of fun. But my only point in really bringing that up is that when you plan to get there and when you plan to come home, you need to kind of build in a large cushion. So for instance, in this picture on the right, that's me in the pink parka with my neighbor Jan. And one year we got north of Syracuse. There's an 86 car pileup on Route 81. And we just sat in traffic for 4 hours until the road cleared. But as you can see, we're having a really good time. One of the other really fun things is, there's 2 ways to get across the Ottawa River. And one is just in a bridge in the town of Ottawa. But the first few times we drove, we just followed our Garmin's, and it took us to a little teeny ferry in the middle of nowhere. And in the upper left-hand corner, that's a picture taken from one of our cars as we drove onto this 20-car ferry that runs back and forth 24 hours a day to take people across the Ottawa River. And you can kind of see off the side there the ice flow in the river. And the only reason there's even an open space is simply because the ferry's going back and forth. And I put this picture in the bottom here because it just totally cracked me up. They were clearing snow from the street just like with like a snow blower, but their snow blower is so big that they actually have to get cars out of the way. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's looks like there's something dumping snow. It's not dumping, it's blowing snow. This is the snow blowers blowing it into a dump truck, and the giant turning wheels are about 3 to 4 feet high that are grinding up the snow. So it can be quite an adventure getting there, but it's always worth it. And one of the reasons, at least for me, that not in addition to having a wonderful ski opportunity, is one of the places to stay, and a lot of participants stay there, is at the Chateau Montebello. And that's the photo in the upper left-hand corner. Now the Chateau Montebello, I think, used to be integrated directly in with the Canadian Ski Marathon, but the Fairmont Hotel chain purchased it a while ago. So it's still integrated into the events, but you have to actually book reservations separately from the Canadian Ski Marathon. But one of the ways I got my neighbors to agree is by showing them how wonderful this is. And in fact, I think that's what lured my daughter to come up to the Canadian Ski Marathon as well, because even if you don't ski, there is, oh gosh, sledding and curling and ice skating and dog sledding and hot tubs and pools and world-class dining. And so for me, one of the really lovely things is I love to ski by myself, but I love to get together at the end of the day with friends. And this was a really wonderful place to do that. It's very pricey. especially if you're used to being, I spend most of my time doing wilderness camping, so it's kind of a shock to stay there, but it's a total treat. What a lot of families and younger people do, the Canadian Ski Marathon has arranged with the Pompanouville High School, which is the town right next to Montebello, and they have a dorm at the Pompanouville High School. So for a much smaller fee, you can bring your air mattress or your sleeping pad and just set up camp in the high school auditorium. And they provide breakfast and dinner as well. And then, of course, if you're one of the cool kids, if you're one of the Coureurs de Bois, you're going to be sleeping outside. So here's another couple of pictures of Gold Camp. And these guys, it looks like they're either having their dinner or have just eaten and getting ready for bed. Now, as I said, the Canadian Ski Marathon provides free shuttle buses. They look like school buses to and from the Pompanouville auditorium where people stay, from the Montebello where people stay, and from another school where commuters will come in and park their cars. And there are designated times for all the buses. And the first buses roll out, I think, at 4 a.m. to bring the Coureurs de Bois. But then the regular buses begin a little bit later, and you can find which bus you want based on which checkpoint you want to go to. So you can see in the upper left-hand corner, this is probably a local ski club with a bunch of kids going to ski a Canadian Ski Marathon section together. And then below, these are my neighbors, Ginny and Jan. They just skied one of the sections and they got back on the bus and they're heading home to the Montebello. So here we are. This is actually one time the four of us, we took the bus out to the beginning. This is back when it still started outside of Gatineau. And as you can see, we got there very early because sun has still not come up. So just to give you an idea of how much it costs to participate in the Canadian Ski Marathon, for a tour, which is what I ski as, that's one that allows you to ski as much or as little as you like, it's roughly 200 Canadian dollars. And it's less if you register early. And I will just say again, this is a nonprofit organization. All the money really goes to creating this experience. And it's run by a ton of committed volunteers. So what you're paying for is all the support, the trail maintenance, the buses and so on. So, to me, it's a very, very reasonable. Sorry, I went the wrong direction. So now you're thinking, oh, great, Priscilla, why are you telling us all about it? This is in the middle of a pandemic. So what's going to happen to the Canadian, how does the Canadian Ski Marathon matter to me in 2021 when none of us can cross the border? Well, it's still happening. So because of the pandemic, the 2021 Canadian Ski Marathon will be virtual. And where for many Canadians, that's kind of a bummer. I mean, for us who couldn't get there anyway, this gives us a chance to still participate. So rather than being a 2-day event at the beginning of February, it's now going to occur between February 6th and March 7th, giving people a chance to pick their own time and trail conditions to complete their marathon sections. And all the normal categories, whether it's a tour, a Coureurs de Bois, or even a half marathon, are all going to be available, and you can still participate just as you had. And you can still, it says, accumulate real awards. And one thing I didn't talk about is one of the things that people like to do is once you've skied 50 sections, you get a permanent bib number. So this helps you accumulate those sections. And, at first I thought, well, gee, that'll take me at least 5 years because I can only do 10 sections a year. And honestly, if I do 2 sections a year, I'm good. So for me, here's a chance to, over a month, to complete 10 sections. And one of the things, and I really didn't talk about it, but the Canadian Ski Marathon is a real sort of, to me, a focal point, because I know in February, I'm going to try to push myself to ski more than I've skied all year. So it gives me a sort of like almost a guidepost to say, gee, I got to get out this week and do something so I can be ready for the Canadian Ski Marathon. And the virtual ski marathon gives us that same opportunity. So as I said, you've got this month-long period from the 6th to the 7th. You're going to select your own category. You want to register online at skimarathon.ca, and you're still going to receive your toque, that hat. You'll still get your badge, and they'll give you a printable bib. And they're just asking that people then, when you do this, while you ski, if you have a phone, bring it with you and take some photos so that we can share them all with each other. Now, just to talk about how this actually works for individual categories, because I would assume most people, especially if they haven't done this before, would probably start as tourers, which is what I am. And so for a tourer, you can ski as many sections as you want, but a section must be at least 15 kilometers. So in one outing, you need to go out and ski 15 kilometers. If you ski 15 to 29 kilometers, it's still one section. So you might as well ski 30, because then you get credit for 2 sections. You can ski as many times as you want, but you're only going to get credit for 10 sections. And you can ski on as many different days as you want, which is really, really nice, because that means, you know, you can skip a day if it's windy or if the snow is not great, and you can go out when you've got some really good ski conditions. For the people that were interested in doing a half marathon, your goal is simply to ski 3 sections for a total of 45 kilometers in a single outing. You only get to do, you can do it as many times as you want, but you only get 1 award. And again, you have 4 weeks in which to choose to do that from. Now, where this really is a little bit different is for the Coureur de Bois. And if you happened to be interested in really competing as a Coureur de Bois and you haven't skied yet as a Coureur de Bois, this is the year for you, because rather than skiing 160 kilometers, you only need to ski 100 kilometers. And you need to ski, so basically you need to ski 50 kilometers for 2 consecutive days. And so like if you wanted to sort of jumpstart and get into the Coureur de Bois, this is your chance to bag the bronze, so that next year when the Canadian Ski Marathon resumes in its former glory, you can compete as a silver. But now if you've already completed the bronze, you need to compete either as silver or you can compete as a gold, in which case you need to carry your packs. Gold still would need to sleep outside. So for instance, let's just say, you know, I'm a super cool Coureur de Bois gold and I want to do it again, or I'm a silver and now I want to get my gold. What I could do is I could go up to Tug Hill, ski 50 kilometers either through Osceola or through the Nona Forest, and then I could camp out on state land, get up and do it all again. And just don't, you know, you do have to do this over 2 consecutive days, but just remember you've got a 4-week window in which to choose those days. So once you've done that, you submit your results via email. It is basically for those of us who are tourers and people that choose to do the half marathon, it's an honor system. They're going to believe when you tell them that you've skied what you skied. For the Coureur de Bois skiers, they're asking people to also submit GPX or Strava files, you know, something that show the distance that you've actually skied. And with everybody, again, please just send your photos so that it's something that we can sort of share on the web and kind of keep the love alive through this crazy time. So you really want to ski locally, be safe, follow public health guidelines. You want to wear your lovely Canadian Ski Marathon toques and your bibs, and always go back to skimarathon.ca for more information. Now, if you remember, I said normally to ski the Canadian Ski Marathon as a tour, it's about 200 plus Canadian dollars. Now to be a tour, it's only 25 Canadian dollars. So really it's probably less than $20 US. So I highly urge you to think about participating, because it's something you could really, at least as a core, you can definitely get a section done at Harriet Hollister. If it ever snows here, we could get it at Mendon Ponds, and clearly there's plenty of opportunity to ski down at Tug Hill or Mount Van Hodenberg and so on. So this is my my neighbors again. We are, you know, I'd love to say this was from this year, but of course it's not, but this is us out there skiing. And I just encourage you all to kind of think about participating in the marathon. And with that, I will finish my talk and turn it over and then see if people have questions.
So everybody's on mute. Please unmute if you want to ask a question so we can hear it too.
Priscilla, Coleridge Gill.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Congratulations on what you've done at the Canadian Ski Marathon. I myself am a Coureur de Bois. I have my bronze and my silver, and I have skied the CSM 4 years in a row from 1984, 85, 86, and 87. And what you have described is really true to point, except for when I skied it, we started at La Chute, skied to Montebello, and from Montebello, we skied into Ottawa. And that was all 4 years. So when I did it, we skied down the river into Ottawa. And that's where we finished, right in the heart of Ottawa.
Yeah.
And that was the old, I guess you could call that the old course. And the other thing I'd like to mention is the point you made about the Cours de Bois. When you've done your goal in Canada, I've skied all over the world. I'm an avid cross-country skier. I've skied Europe, Canada, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Banff, I don't know, everywhere in the United States. But for the CSM, what attracted me to it was an article that I read back in the 80s about it being the toughest ski marathon in the world. So I just trained here in Rochester, roller skiing up and down Clover Street on the weekends and on the canal path. But the true thing is that the Canadian Cours de Bois, when you tell them that you're a Cours de Bois, they ask you what year you skied it in, because they want to know what the temperature was. Because the first year I skied, I spent the night in the gym on a sleeping pad, and it was ice and rain and snow overnight. So when I got up the next morning and started skiing with a headlamp at 5 a.m. in the morning, and you can't see where you're going, you're just following the person in front of you, so to speak, for the first 5 or 10K, it was all ice and whatnot.
Whoa.
So, and then I was glad to hear that section 3 is still the most difficult section.
Would you tell
Because
people about what it's like? Because
section 3 is a bear when you ski it from La Chute to Montebello, because it's up and down, and you have to plan that so that you get out of section 3 so that you have enough time to finish section 4 and get the time limit. And so I missed the time limit, my first Cours de Bois, by 5 minutes. So I was not a happy skier. And the next day I still went on and skied section 5. And I skied the next day I skied all 5 sections as well. But section 3 takes a lot out of you. Day 1 in the CSM is the toughest day. Day 2 is the easiest day because it's undulating terrain all the way. But what I found most exciting about it was just skiing down the Rydal Canal into Ottawa and whatnot, with all the lights and all the people cheering. It's for those who haven't done it, as you have said, and I can relate to very well, having done it 4 years in a row. It's one of the best ski experiences I've had. I've met people from all over the world, and it was just a great experience. Even the first year I skied it, I had the pleasure of meeting Jackrabbit Johansson.
did you really?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting him at the dinner afterwards that first year, and I never forgot that as long as I live. I'll never forget that. And he was, he still had the great twinkle in his eyes, so to speak.
Wow.
So
Are
let
you
someone else say something.
Well, I'm just curious, would you ever ski it again? I mean, now? Have you thought again?
I would probably go ski it again. I don't know if I could probably do all 5 sections again, but it would be a push. I would really have to get out and train. I've done the, Tug Hill Tour-a-thon. I've done that like 19 or 20 times already.
Yeah.
I've done Gatineau. I did that back in the 80s. I did that a couple, 3 times. the Gatineau 55 when they did that. And I've skied some marathons over in Europe, and I've skied in Germany, I've skied in France, Switzerland, the North Wall at Grindelwald. I've been there and skied in Grindelwald, Switzerland. Where else? Austria, Banff, Northern Quebec, British Columbia, Colorado, the California Gold Rush.
Well, what advice would you have for people that have not skied it? You know, I mean, because there's gonna be people like you and there's people like me. I would say
Yeah.
I'm with personality versus talent. I mean, do you have any advice for people in terms of
Yeah, I mean,
what makes
the
it worth
thing
trying?
is that I would just say, look at the sections and see how they're described, and just pick a section and go ski it. And if you're going to do section 3, you might want to do a little hill work before that,
Yes,
just so
yes.
that you can get up and down the hills. But for the other sections, I found them mostly. I didn't find them that difficult. But section 3 for sure is a bear.
Yeah.
And when you're carrying that 20-pound pack, it's a double bear. So anyhow, congratulations to you and your friends for completing the sections that you have, and to your other friends as well that have completed. And it's very nice to have met someone from Rochester who's done that.
Oh, that's great. Well, not quite like you, but still. And maybe this is a good chance to introduce everybody to Ross and Beth McLeod. Why don't you guys wave? And I don't know if they're speaker. Are your speakers on? Ross?
I know mine is.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Ross and Beth are. I'm just wondering because Ross has, I believe, and when he turns it on, he can correct me, but I believe he's been doing he's been skiing this marathon for about 30 years.
Oh my God.
I know he and his son have done Coureur de Bois. In fact, first time I met Ross, he had just come in for the Coureur de Bois, and Ross is a perpetually happy, never ever seen him grumpy guy.
Yeah.
And he just came in, having skied 160 kilometers, where Beth, his wife, and I, and his mother-in-law, we were all sitting around drinking wine, and he kind of walked over, and I thought, boy, he's gonna like stinky and grouchy. No, he sat and he chatted with us.
Yeah.
He was so happy. So I know, Ross, do you have anything? Can you talk at all?
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, the earphones help. Well, look, thank you very much for letting me sit in on your meeting. It's nice to meet so many outdoors folks, and we miss coming down to the States. We're down there quite a bit. Hopefully we'll be able to see y'all before too long. It's a fantastic event, and for me, it's all about fun. I'm going into my 31st Canadian Ski Marathon this year, although it is virtual, and every single one of them has been fun. From doing one section with my young children to doing the whole thing and sleeping out, and with family, friends like Priscilla. It's always great, and I do always finish with a giant smile on my face. And maybe one final thought is, it's your marathon all the time. It's whatever you want it to be. And that's the fantastic thing about it. If you go to a race, you have a race course and there's a clock and all that stuff. For every single person who does the Canadian Ski Marathon, it's their marathon and their goal.
That's right. And as you said, Roz, congratulations on skiing with your family member, because the first year when I did it, when I did my bronze, I had the pleasure of skiing with a gentleman who was skiing with his daughter, and she was Coureur de Bois, and she was going for her bronze as well. So she and her father skied that year so that she could get her bronze. And I believe, if I remember correctly, 3 years later, I think she may have been the first woman Coureur de Bois. I think she was, if I remember correctly, because when I skied, it was back in the 80s. So I'm a lot older than you are.
If I
So-
can just pick up, riff on that a little bit, Coleridge, the woman's name was Claudia Van Wyck, and she was one of
Yeah.
the first people. And Claudia actually was an international level whitewater kayaker.
Oh,
and
that's
she
Claudia from Madawaska?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
Oh,
she had many Canadian international records in
Yeah.
kayaking. And she told me one time that her favorite record of everything she's done, and she's a supremely accomplished athlete, was that first of 2 females to finish the Gold Coureur de Bois.
Right, yeah, yeah. So, great event. I would encourage everyone who's listening, who wants to have a lot of fun and wants to meet a lot of people, a lot of different people, and just have a great weekend of skiing to participate. It's just a great event. And as you said, and I'll say it again, it's as Priscilla said, it's just a great skiing event, a great ski weekend. And it's one of the events that everyone should have the opportunity to do, to put it on their bucket list.
and because one of the things I always feel that I'm a good salesperson in this regard, because I am a skier with personality, a lot more personality than talent. And I mean, I just love to ski. But you don't have to be, one of the great things about being in my 60s, I think sometimes people can get really hung up about, well, I don't want to go out there because like all the people will be faster and better and this. And I'm like, don't worry about it. There will always be at that marathon people that are slower than you and whatever, younger, older, whatever. And there really is, it really is a marathon for everybody. I mean, I skied one year with the Coureur de Bois dad and his daughter, who was 8 years old. And she was really tired. And we spent the whole time talking about blue Smurfs just to kind of get her up this hill. It's just a little bit of everything for everybody. So
It is.
it's hard for me to tell because I don't know many of you, except on Zoom, whether you're skiers. But I would really, this is such a great event. Not only in terms of just sort of getting out and meeting people in this beautiful environment, but it also, let's face it, Rochester winters are really dreary. And if you have something going into where you can say, hey, in February, I'm going to Canadian Ski Marathon. I don't know, well, today I'm tired, but I better go down to Harriet Hollister and ski for a few hours, or maybe I'll head up to Minot. It's always given me, sort of in the darker days of winter, something to kind of look forward to and kind of drive me into action when I maybe have more inclination to be a slug. So, and it really, and in terms of like ages, I think this past year I had, Ross, you might be able to correct me, but I was talking to Jillian, who's one of the ambassador people. And she said that this year, I think the Coureur de Bois, the men range from 16 to 82. And the women range from 18 to 65.
Wow.
So to think that this is just a bunch of 20 and 30-year-old elite skiers, there are, believe me, and it's actually really kind of fun to watch them. Like, I don't know how they do what they do. But it's everybody's marathon.
It is.
It
really is.
Sorry, if I can just come in. Oh, sorry. Just add one or two other little facts. We have a few hundred American skiers every year, and we love to have them there. And they always get a very warm welcome when they come. We've already got 23 registered for this year, 3 from New York State. I checked today. And our youngest participant this year is going to be 4 years old, and the oldest one is going to be 82 so far.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
That's great. So everyone else is quiet.
Are anybody else skiers on the call?
He skied.
Yeah, in fact, Chris, I know Chris and I have skied together. So I know because I've skied with Chris DeGoyer. She's
I know
more
Chris
downhill
DeGoyer.
theme than I am, but totally, Chris, I highly recommend that this is something totally you can manage. Go for it. And I would really, one of the great things about the internet today is if you want to know a little bit more information, hi Beth, if you want to know a little bit more information, they've got great YouTube videos.
No, Brian, trust me, it's okay.
But check out the YouTube videos. Just Google Canadian Ski Marathon, and there's just
Mhm.
wonderful opportunities to kind of see, what it looks like if you want to get another sense of it.
I wanted to make a very minor point. Jerry Fletcher sent us a note just giving us the translation between kilometers and miles. So in the chat, he mentions that 160 kilometers is equal to 100 miles.
That is true.
Okay? If you think in miles, like many of us Americans do, that's 100 miles over 2 days.
That's
Yeah.
50 miles each day.
It is.
Right.
It's a lot. Has anybody skied the Berkey?
No, I've
Tell us
never done
about the
the
Berkey.
Yeah, I've never
I've always
skied it.
wanted to,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I always did the Canadian Ski Marathon instead of doing the Berkey, and then I
Yeah.
was always doing a trip at the time of the Berkey, or I was coaching and we had states or sectionals or something, so I could
Yeah.
never get to the Berkey.
Well,
But,
I've only met, I think if you can do it, any of these low pit rate, you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is the Berkey? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Very little.
Okay.
Only because I registered for it in the wrong class. There was no snow and I didn't go. So that's my whatever.
So the
it's-
Berkey is the largest ski race in America, in the United States. Okay,
Wisconsin.
held in Haywood, Wisconsin, and generally in February. I think it's the first or second weekend in February, somewhere in February. And there are skiers that come to the Berkey from all over the world. Some of the world's best skiers come to the Berkey. Just as at the Gatineau, when I was racing way back when, I met a lot of the world's best skiers at the Gatineaus, Olympic skiers, world champions, both male, female. So you will find that at the Berkey. And
It's
you'll-
part of the World Loppet, which is a
yeah,
Gatineau.
the Berkey is part of the world. There used to be the world. What was it? I can't think of the term, but there were a number of races that were on the World Loppet circuit, and the Berkey is one of them. Gatineau was another one. One year, the Tug Hill Tourathon, I think for 2 years was on that circuit as well. So, at Tug Hill, I don't remember the specific year, but or years that it was on the World Loppet schedule. We had the world's best skiers in central and up in Sandy Creek. I mean, the world's from all over the world. Russia, Switzerland, France, Italy. Unbelievable. It's just an unbelievable experience we had the head coach from the Canadian Olympic team was there skiing. It was just an unbelievable event, those couple of years.
One thing you should be aware of with both with the Berkey and with the Gatineau is there's both classic Nordic ski categories and skate ski categories.
Right.
Whereas the Canadian Ski Marathon, there's no skate skiing. It's all
Right. It's
classic
totally classic.
skiing.
Yeah, totally classic. And that was the one thing about the Tug Hill Tourathon that I always liked about that, because it was always a classic race, and I really prefer classic skiing as opposed to skating. I just think it's better. That's just my choice. Even though I skate, it's great.
Does the Tug Hill Tourathon still happen?
Yeah, it's going to happen. Supposedly, it's going to happen. They're going to have a race this year, as far as I know. It's going to be in February.
Is that the Winona Tourathon they call it now?
Yeah,
Okay.
in the Winona Forest. Okay, it's called the Tug Hill Tourathon, and limited registration this year because of the pandemic and whatnot. But they're still going to have it, and registration's open as far as I know. But if people want to go, it's a great place to ski. It's going to be a looped course as it has been for the last several years. But I remember skiing the old course, the old 50K course. Was, you would start at one point and come back to a different point. What road? You'd start on what road and end up about 3 miles up the road at, I can't think of the name of the little schoolhouse that's there. But yeah, so the old 50K course, they just do a loop course, 25K loop course now.
But that would be a great place if you wanted, sorry, I have to plug in the Canadian Ski Marathon. If you wanted to do your virtual marathon, that would be a great.
Oh yeah.
You can't do it at that event, but you can do it at that place.
Oh yeah, you can go up there and you can go there either up to Osceola and do it, or you could go down to another place that's south of Syracuse. You could go to Highland Forest and do it there at Highland Forest as well and whatnot. So yeah, plenty of opportunities to ski. It's just that you have to drive to them.
Yeah.
And of course, if you just want to ski loops, you can go to the Nordic Center in Bristol at the top. And just ski around and around. But right now,
there's no other option.
No, I mean, I officiated 2 races there last week and whatnot. So high school races. So.
Right. Well, that's why you're sharing the Bristol, the Nordic Center with every ski team in Monroe County at this point.
Yeah. They have races.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay, I've got a question. Does anybody have any other questions for Priscilla tonight about the Canadian Ski Marathon?
Yeah, I'm sorry, folks.
No, it's awesome. I appreciate it.
I don't want to hold everybody here if they came for a presentation on that. Any other questions tonight? Well, I'd like to thank Priscilla for presenting. It was a great night of information, and maybe there can be some, thank you, Priscilla. It was wonderful. I'm inspired. I'm ready to participate.
Hey, Jill, we can do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to at least get my one section, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, it's great inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you guys all for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Priscilla. Enjoy talking with both you and Ross.
Likewise. All righty. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.